Today, I'll be discussing consumer protection and government regulation with a focus on how regulatory agencies work to safeguard the public. We'll also consider which types of products receive the closest scrutiny and why that oversight matters in business environments. The goal is to connect regulation with everyday consumer safety, business responsibility, and public trust. As we move through the presentation, I'll highlight the key concepts that explain how these protections operate. Markets are powerful tools for organizing economic activity, but they do not always produce fair or safe outcomes on their own. Problems arise when buyers and sellers have unequal information, when competition breaks down, or when products create serious risks for consumers. Regulation exists to address these market failures. It helps correct harmful imbalances, establish standards of trust, and protect people when ordinary market forces are not enough. The goal is not to replace commerce, but to make commercial exchange more fair, transparent, and safe for everyone. There are four core rationales for regulation. First, information asymmetry. Sellers may know much more than buyers, so disclosure requirements support informed decisions. Second, public safety. For products with serious risks, standards and testing can protect life and health when market forces alone are not enough. Third, market power. Antitrust and consumer protections help prevent dominant firms from eliminating competition or abusing their position. Finally, regulation addresses externalities, such as pollution or health risks, by accounting for costs that would otherwise fall on third parties rather than appear in the price. This slide introduces the major federal regulatory agencies and the way they organize oversight across the United States. Rather than placing responsibility for all commercial activity with one institution, the regulatory landscape is divided among specialized agencies. Each agency focuses on a distinct domain, developing expertise, and enforcing rules within that area. The key idea is specialization. Understanding which agency governs particular activity is essential for recognizing the applicable requirements, responsibilities, and sources of regulatory authority. Together, these agencies form the broader federal framework for commercial regulation. This slide highlights four federal agencies that protect consumers in different parts of the marketplace. The FTC addresses unfair or deceptive business practices, including truth in advertising and antitrust concerns. The FDA oversees the safety and approval of products such as food, medicines, medical devices, cosmetics, and tobacco. The CPSC focuses on consumer goods, setting safety standards and issuing recalls when products are hazardous. Finally, the CFPB regulates financial services, including mortgages, credit cards, and student loans, with the goal of preventing predatory practices. Together, these agencies cover a broad range of everyday consumer risks. Agencies protect consumers across the entire product lifecycle, not just at the point of approval. Layered. Continuous protection begins with pre-market approval and mandatory disclosure, then continues through inspections and ongoing monitoring after products reach the market. When problems arise, agencies can use enforcement actions, including binding rulemaking, civil penalties, litigation, and product recalls. Together, these tools address unsafe practices, discourage persistent noncompliance, and create accountability for manufacturers and other regulated organizations. The goal is to identify risks early, respond decisively, and reduce harm to consumers. This slide explains why some products face much more regulatory scrutiny than others. Regulators generally direct the greatest resources toward situations where failure could cause serious harm. Three factors are especially important. First, the severity of potential harm, particularly death or serious injury. Second, the vulnerability of the users, such as children, older adults, or people who are ill. And third, complexity and information gaps. When consumers cannot judge safety for themselves, government oversight becomes more necessary. Together, these factors help determine the intensity of regulation. Pharmaceutical approval follows a carefully staged process. It begins with discovery and preclinical work, including laboratory and animal testing, followed by an FDA review of the investigational new drug application. Next, Phase 1 through 3 trials evaluate safety and efficacy in human participants, often numbering in the thousands. The FDA then conducts a rigorous analysis of the trial data, with review averaging 10 to 12 months. Approval is not the endpoint. Post-market surveillance continues, and the agency can require label changes or recalls when necessary. This slide shows how financial services regulation changed with the creation of the CFPB in 2011. Before the Bureau, consumers faced widespread predatory mortgage lending, hidden credit card fees, and misleading loan terms, often with little effective recourse. After its creation, lenders were required to clearly disclose APRs, fees, and loan terms, while abusive practices, including payday loan debt traps, became subject to explicit prohibitions and enforcement. The results are measurable. More than $19 billion returned to harm consumers, over 4 million complaints handled, and action against hundreds of firms. This slide highlights the main criticisms and trade-offs of regulation. Compliance requirements can fall especially heavily on small businesses, raising barriers to entry and potentially reducing competition. Regulation can also slow innovation, as lengthy approval timelines, particularly in pharmaceuticals, may delay life-saving products from reaching patients. Another concern is regulatory capture, when oversight agencies become too closely aligned with the industries they supervise. The central challenge is finding the right balance, protecting consumers robustly while preserving the innovation and competition that support long-term benefits. The key takeaways are straightforward. Market failures justify regulation, especially when information gaps, safety risks, or power imbalances threaten consumers. Specialized agencies divide responsibility, while higher-risk sectors receive stronger oversight. Finally, effective policy manages trade-offs, protecting consumers without unnecessarily limiting competition, innovation, or market dynamism.